Trump hails fantastic trade deals with Xi as Beijing summit closes on trade, Iran and Taiwan. It was a summit that carried the weight of the world's most consequential bilateral relationship. And when it wrapped in the gardens of Zhongnanhai on Friday, both leaders were at pains to call it a success. U.S. President Donald Trump concluded a two-day visit to Beijing, the first by a sitting American president in nearly a decade. After high-stakes talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping that touched on trade, the war in Iran, the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, artificial intelligence, and the ever-sensitive question of Taiwan. The setting for the final session was deliberately warm. The two leaders strolled through the Zhongnanhai compound, the historic heart of Chinese central leadership, walking side by side through covered passageways lined with painted archways depicting birds and traditional mountain scenes. At one point, as the two leaders walked past a garden in full bloom, Xi paused to remark on the roses. In a moment that captured the carefully choreographed geniality of the visit, he said, "These are the most beautiful roses anyone has ever seen." I asked the president, "Could you get me some for the rose garden?" And he said, "Yes, I've never seen roses so big." Xi, through a translator, explained the history of the compound and sent rose seeds back with Trump as a parting gift. But beneath the pleasantries, both sides were aware of how much was riding on the outcome. Fantastic deals, but details remained thin as the summit drew to a close. Trump emerged upbeat, framing the 2 days as a turning point in the bilateral relationship. He said, "I want to thank you very much. It has been an incredible visit. Many good things have come out of it. We've achieved some fantastic trade deals, excellent for both countries." The president also said the two sides had settled a lot of different problems that others would have struggled to resolve and lavish praise on the U.S.-China relationship more broadly. Yet despite the bullish tone, no major formal agreements or breakthrough announcements were made public before Trump departed Beijing. So according to a White House readout, the discussions focused on expanding economic cooperation and increasing market access for U.S. businesses. Both sides also discussed growing Chinese purchases of American agricultural products and addressing the flow of fentanyl precursor chemicals into the United States. Trump asserted that China agreed to purchase 200 Boeing aircraft and expressed interest in increasing imports of U.S. oil and soybeans, moves Beijing sees as an opportunity to reduce its dependence on energy routed through the increasingly volatile Strait of Hormuz. A delegation of some of the U.S.'s most powerful corporate figures accompanied Trump on the trip, including Tesla chief Elon Musk, Apple CEO Tim Cook, BlackRock's Larry Fink, and Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg, a signal that business interests will air front and center throughout. Xi, for his part, described the visit in sweeping terms. He said, "This visit has been historic and landmark, during which we have established a new bilateral relationship, a constructive and strategic international relationship. It can truly be described as a landmark visit. Moreover, we've achieved significant results in our cooperation, which have also contributed greatly to international affairs." She also raised the question of whether the U.S. and China could avoid the so-called Thucydides trap, the historical tendency for a rising power and a ruling one to slide toward conflict. It was a pointed framing from a Chinese leader who has, over the past year, grown considerably more confident in his position. Analysts note that China was the first major economy to retaliate against Trump's sweeping tariff policies in April 2025 and has since managed to neutralize much of their impact, giving Beijing considerably more leverage heading into this week's talks that it had during Trump's 2017 visit. Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, a war that won't end if trade dominated the optics of the summit. The war in Iran hung over every room since February 28, 2026, when the United States and Israel launched a military campaign against Iran, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. In the initial strikes, shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been largely paralyzed. Iran responded by closing the strait, launching counter-strikes against Israel, U.S. military bases, and Gulf Arab states. The U.S. subsequently imposed a counter-blockade on ships attempting to reach Iranian ports, and the strait, through which roughly 20% of global seaborne oil trade once flowed, has seen traffic fall to a fraction of pre-war levels. The economic consequences have been severe. Gas prices have spiked. Global energy markets remain on edge, and the crisis has injected urgency into every diplomatic encounter, including this one. Both Trump and Xi addressed the Hormuz situation directly and found, at least publicly, that they broadly agreed on what needs to happen. Trump said, "We talked about Iran. We have very similar views on Iran. We want that to end, and we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. We want the straits open. Now we're closing them. They close them, and then we close them over them. But we want the straits open, and we want them to put an end to this because it's kind of crazy, kind of crazy." The White House said both leaders agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open to ensure global energy flows and that Iran should not be permitted to obtain a nuclear weapon. Xi expressed interest in purchasing more U.S. oil, partly as a way of reducing China's own reliance on energy transiting the now dangerous strait. Secretary of State Marco Rubio later clarified that Trump had not explicitly asked Xi to intervene and help end the war, but confirmed that Iran, the strait, and the risk of regional escalation were central to the conversations. The Chinese Foreign Ministry issued a separate statement on Friday calling for what it described as a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire across the Middle East and urged the reopening of the shipping lanes. Beijing has notable leverage in this space. China is Iran's largest trade partner and the top buyer of its oil. Whether it chooses to use that leverage remains to be seen. Taiwan, a line that can't be crossed. Not everything was warm. On the first day of the summit, Xi delivered a pointed warning to Trump that mishandling the question of Taiwan's independence could cause clashes and even conflicts between the two powers. Chinese state media had in the days beforehand referred to Taiwan as the first red line of the summit. Trump did not respond to reporters' questions on Taiwan while standing alongside Xi, a studied silence that Beijing will have noted carefully. The U.S. maintains a long-standing position of acknowledging but not endorsing China's claim over Taiwan. While preserving an unofficial but robust relationship with Taipei, any deviation from that diplomatic formula, however accidental, could provide Beijing with the opening it has long sought, a landmark visit with caveats. As Air Force One lifted off from Beijing Capital International Airport, Trump left behind a city that had extended every courtesy: the red carpet welcome, the military honor guard, the children waving flags, the lavish state dinner at the Great Hall of the People, the strolls through historic gardens. She even invited Trump, along with First Lady Melania Trump, to return the hospitality with a White House visit on September 24. Whether the summit produces lasting results or follows the trajectory of Trump's 2017 trip, big announcements followed by a sharp deterioration, remains the central question. Analysts are cautious. In 2017, China came to the table wary of tariffs. This time, it came confident, having already absorbed and blunted Trump's biggest economic moves. What is clear is that the two most powerful leaders on earth spent 2 days in the same room, found some common ground on trade, and Iran skirted the hardest questions on Taiwan and agreed, at least publicly, that the relationship matters. That for now may be enough.